Arnold Schwarzenegger's Triangle of Sadness concludes with a Commando clone that removes the cheeky one-liners, the chainmail-wearing villain, and the campy action, but it does add a hat? It's time for Collateral Damage. Hello friends, and welcome back to Every Arnold Movie Ever, episode 28. And we have reached the conclusion of Arnold's Triangle of Sadness, a trio of underwhelming and underperforming films that eroded Arnold's enormous box office clout that started in the mid-80s and ran all the way up to 1997. After audiences' mild response to End of Days and the outright rejection of The Sixth Day, Arnold dropped Day from the title of his next movie altogether and delivered Collateral Damage, a movie about a fireman who seeks revenge on a terrorist who killed his wife and child. It was supposed to be released in the fall of 2001, but you know, something happened in the fall of 2001, and that suddenly made the Arnold formula, and this movie in particular, immediately obsolete. But when Arnold took Collateral Damage, he didn't know any of that. All he knew was that there was a script by David and Peter Griffiths, who had no prior screenwriting experience, but they won the Diane Thomas Award at UCLA for a spec script they wrote, and then they were able to sell Collateral Damage. Actually, before Collateral Damage, David worked as a VP at Goldman Sachs. And this is one of those alternately inspiring and infuriating stories that you hear as a screenwriter. It's like people spend their whole lives trying to get scripts they've written made, and these two guys just come waltzing out of the gate with no experience, and suddenly they've got an Arnold Schwarzenegger vehicle. The cynical writer in me wants to say, you know, good job, guys. The hopeful writer in me says, not much, because it's hard to be hopeful as a writer. No, it's good. Like, there's hope for all of us, right? It shows that, like, anybody can do it if they just have a really fucking killer script. You just gotta keep writing, bro. That's the advice I had gotten the most when I was a younger writer, is like, hey, bro, you just gotta keep writing. If you really want to make a writer angry, tell them, yeah, just keep writing. Just keep writing. For director, Warner Brothers hired Andrew Davis, who gave us some of Seagal's best early movies, The Fugitive, and also The Running Man, for about 8 days. You can go back to that episode to hear the full story, but here's a little taste. D'Souza wasn't thrilled with Davis's ideas. Andy said, listen, I have a great idea. At the end of the movie, when they break into the studio, they're cornered. Then Arnold reaches into his pocket and takes out one of the exploding hockey pucks, throws it, and kills the guards. Rob and I look at each other and he says, he had this thing in his pocket for the whole movie where the whole supporting cast is getting killed and he uses it to save his own ass. We're not doing that. But when Davis shot that scene, which was one of the first scenes they did, he improvised Arnold pocketing one of the hockey pucks, and it pissed everyone off. Man, he really wanted Arnold to pocket that hockey puck grenade. So much so that he got fired for it. And so here we are, Davis and Arnold getting to reteam and shoot a movie from start to finish. And this one is markedly different from the tone of The Running Man, and really all of his movies from the 80s. This is a more grounded film, and our second in a row where Arnold plays an ordinary man thrust into an extraordinary situation. Now, we all know how that turned out for The Sixth Day, but let's see if we can get different results here. Collateral Damage opens by introducing us to Gordy Brewer in the midst of a firefight. It shows his tenacity and willingness to go into danger to save lives. That sets him up for his heroism later. And they do this tease where it seems like he's a goner. But then the next morning, his wife wakes up and finds him playing with their son.
Look at this.
Actually, that would be a great twist, is if Arnold were in the first 3 minutes of the movie, and then he ended up becoming Collateral Damage, and his wife had to go seek vengeance. That's not this movie, though. We get to spend time with his family for a good, 3 minutes, covering 2.5 scenes, and the filmmaker's like, yeah, that's probably enough, before...
Hi, Daddy!
No!
Just before the explosion, Gordy arrived at the location to pick up his son, and he had an interaction with the terrorist responsible while he was cosplaying as the T-1000. After the attack, Gord is seemingly in shock. All his firefighter buddies come to see him in the hospital.
Turner says the FBI knows the bomb was hidden in a stolen police motorcycle.
I saw a cop. I saw him.
So Gord immediately goes to the FBI to give them pretty much no information at all.
We think that the bomb may have been triggered by a cell phone. Did he have one on him?
I don't know.
How long between the time you saw him and the explosion?
5 seconds, maybe 10.
They already knew who this guy was, so his visit was pointless.
We know this guy. His name is Claudio Perini. We think he's a terrorist who calls himself El Lobo, the wolf.
Then they callously let him watch his family die with like the faintest of trigger warnings.
This could be tough to watch, sir.
As if he's viewing a colonoscopy. Gord is then introduced to Peter Brandt, played by the great Elias Koteas. He's the head of the CIA Latin America sector, and he might be shady, or he just might be Elias Koteas. We get a little more Gord grief, and also find out that his wife was a lazy slob and possibly a bad mother who left a glass of wine sitting on a ladder. She not only has glass in a very precarious position, but also alcohol out in the open for this child to drink. Even more Gord grief, and then more exposition via newscast.
On behalf of the people of Colombia, I claim responsibility for the bombing in Los Angeles.
This news channel has no problem broadcasting a full terrorist message on the 6 p.m. news. He does this little gesture at the end.
Sangre o libertad.
And folks, if you ever see something strange like that in a movie, remember it. It will definitely come back. They then interview a Colombian Army of Liberation sympathizer who gets the distinction of saying the name of the movie in the movie.
The deaths of the mother and the little boy are regrettable. It's called Collateral Damage.
And I'm starting to think that this news station is sympathetic to the terrorists. Luckily, it gives Gord someone to direct his anger towards.
I'm not gonna change it. Why should I change it? So you want collateral damage, huh? I give you fucking collateral damage.
Though I think he could use a little bit of time in the batting cages to work on his swing.
You want collateral damage?
The FBI was surveilling the place, so they're right on top of it. They get in there, and Gord gets tased a second time in a row in an Arnold movie. But this time, he actually stays down. Maybe he's an everyman after all. The FBI is like, what the fuck, bro?
You cannot take the law into your own hands.
I think you already lost him.
How does an everyman know this? You know, he's just taking a guess. But actually, turns out he's right.
We're pretty sure the wolf is back in Colombia.
Meanwhile, the Senate Intelligence Committee blames Brandt for the attack and has his mission in Colombia terminated. Brandt then gets a call from the wolf.
He asked for you by name, and he knows details about the bombing that haven't been released.
Who's this?
JK was just Gord goofing around.
You're a tough man to reach.
Gord's looking for more information, and Brandt gives it to him straight.
Justice for your wife and son isn't a priority right now.
Feeling like he's on his own, Gord hits the internet, does his own research, accidentally gets radicalized, and joins the Colombians. Get off 4chan, Gord! One of his firefighting friends brings in like the most random guy I've ever seen in an Arnold movie, even more than Random Exposition Man in Total Recall.
You know, Ed spent 2 years as a military advisor down in Colombia.
He barely even gets an introduction, but this guy is full of useful information.
You can't even land in Colombia. You were on a restricted list 5 minutes after that bomb went off. Panama. Back door into Colombia. You'd never make it into the guerrilla zone without a pass. And they pull your eyelids back over your skull, shove your head up your ass, and blow you off a cliff. Get on a bus.
What luck for Gord! We find out that Gord is actually looking for a way into Colombia. He's taking matters into his own hands, and that seems like the most harrowing part. They say he's probably on a watch list, so he won't be able to travel. Then he has to find his way into the country, then trek through the jungle. And I'm really interested to see how they pull all of that up. Oh, shit. Never mind. He gets in through the magic of map travel.
Maybe we should travel by map.
Good idea, Fozzie.
Repeatedly, they show that Colombia is just an awful, awful, awful place. And they did not shoot in Colombia. Shocker. I couldn't imagine Colombia reading the script and being like, oh, yeah, this will be great for tourism. And then for the second movie in a row, yes, I'm repeating myself, but so is Arnold, he ends up in water as a means of escape. Also shades of The Fugitive. Everyman Gord survives the waterfall, but there's actually a reason here because Gord is a firefighter, and water is the opposite of fire, so that makes them natural friends. Brandt is informed that Gord is in Colombia because he dropped his passport, which gives him an opening to try and continue his operations.
I gave you 12 hours before we find your fireman face down in a lion pit.
Show Washington you can't negotiate with terrorists, wouldn't it?
The wolf also finds out about Gord and wants to capture him for ransom. Luckily for the wolf, Gord gets insta-spotted, like a scene later, and tracked by the wolf's people and the cops. Gord has a meet-cute with this woman and a potential surrogate son.
Hey, what are you doing?
But the cops get to him first and lock him up. Now in jail, Gord meets a Canadian mechanic named Sean Armstrong, played by John Turturro, and he shows up just in time to liven this movie up.
Public lewdness. At least that's what they call it, but I swear I was just standing there. She was doing all the work. You just quiet, or did somebody confiscate your tongue? Because that happens around here, you know.
And Gord tries to work Turturro to get a pass that gets him upriver.
Tell me a pass so I can work the zone.
Would you stick a sock in a Jolly Green? I'm just a wrench for hire.
At the same time, the wolf raids the prison to free his guys. We get big explosions, that's this movie's specialty, and a fire, which is Gord's specialty. The wolf shows up, but if you weren't sure it was the wolf, flashback! Gord is then able to use his skills he picked up as an everyman to incapacitate a gorilla, then uses his firefighter skills to scare the shit out of Sean.
First, the air is gonna heat up in here to 451 degrees. Then your pass will explode like a Roman candle. Then your socks will ignite. Then your hair on your fingernails will melt.
And get the pass from him.
All right. Shit. Take it, huh?
And that's the last we're going to see of Turturro, unfortunately. Now, Brandt shows up just a touch too late, but it allows him the chance to get in the movie's one good joke.
The fireman isn't here either.
Oh, no kidding. The fireman escaped the fire.
We then transition to my favorite part of the movie, only because Gord is now wearing this cool hat to try and blend in. More promotion for Colombia tourism. Just dead people in the river. They get pulled over by gorillas and taken in to meet our comic sidekick of the movie, Felix.
Come on, it's like ordering a pizza around here. You ask for Canadian bacon, you end up with a German sausage, for crying out loud.
I do like seeing Arnold play a German here. He doesn't say as much German as he will in The Escape Plan, but we do get a Danke from him.
Danke.
Then Felix takes him to his house and reveals that he runs a cocaine plant. We get the slightest touch of levity with his dancing employee.
And we're putting my next video, I'm telling you.
And then Gord fakes his way through fixing an engine, but he's not fixing it at all. He's actually making a bomb. What is it with everyman and bomb making? I can barely get a volcano to erupt using baking soda and vinegar. This guy's out here making bombs. Gord faking his way into the cocaine plant actually gives us the most unique death of the movie when one of the wolf's people, Felix sweet-talked into letting Gord through, gets punished by the wolf.
Claudio, listen to me, Claudio.
But he does confirm the power of Gord's hat disguise.
He had a hat on. I didn't recognize him.
And it's here that the wolf really lets his creative juices flow by killing this henchman via snake feeding? Which makes me wonder, they had a terrarium for this snake. Was the wolf taking care of it? Did he have to feed it? Did feeding this snake to the guy also kill the snake? Or does someone have to fish it out of its throat afterwards and put it back in the terrarium? Is this like a one-time thing or a reusable death gimmick? If it's a one-time thing, why would you waste it on a henchman in such a showy way? Who are you showing off to? Your other henchmen? Look, Collateral Damage is only 107 minutes long. I would have been fine with 3 more minutes of them showing us more of the process behind murder by snake. And back to Gord, who snakes a grenade and sets his plan in motion. And wait a second. Gord pocketing an explosive device? Andrew Davis, you finally got Arnold stealing an explosive device in a movie! Now, the wolf's people show up, and Felix gives us a quick nod to the Terminator.
And you know Germans are like cyborgs. They're efficient, man, you know?
Gord wreaks havoc and destroys the coke in the process. Asshole. And in a surprising development, the comic relief is murdered. John Leguizamo doesn't get much screen time, but we actually learn way more about him than Gord's wife and child.
I want to cut an album, man. You want to hear a little taste?
Because if I have to.
Gord hides under a truck and sneaks into the wolf's lair, and the wolf is doing some work from home while Gord preps yet another incendiary device, then puts his fireman training to good use. Whee! Gord escapes into the street and randomly runs into the woman and surrogate child from earlier. What a coincidence! He realizes he's about to do the same thing the wolf did by killing innocent people, so he nobly warns her about the bomb.
No!
But ends up inadvertently saving the wolf's life too. Then we find out... Twist! She's in cahoots! She's cahootin'! But maybe not. She seems a little more sympathetic than the wolf. Now, Gord gets captured again, and we get our, not that long awaited face-to-face between the wolf and Gordy. And you know I'm a sucker for the scene where the hero and the villain get together as my favorite scene in End of Days. It's usually the best scene in these movies. This one is fine.
I remember your face. That was the face of a man who saved lives. Well, your face has changed. You think your wife and son would recognize you now?
And here's what I guess would be our first contender for a one-liner.
So what's the difference between you and I?
The difference is, I'm just gonna kill you.
Gord tries to make good on that promise right away, and it's clear the wolf has been underfeeding him. It takes a lot to take him down, but eventually they do it. Brandt finds out where the wolf's den is and is suddenly all in on a rescue.
We've got a wounded American being tortured in a guerrilla camp. This is a rescue mission.
Mrs. Wolf explains why she loves Mr. Wolf.
When I first met Claudio, he was a teacher.
And warns Gord that if he continues down this path, he'll become just like the wolf.
Now he is a man consumed by hate and driven by rage, just like you.
Yeah, I don't think so. It's a fairly unconvincing argument. He's only out for one guy, and he's not hell-bent on some sort of crusade against all terrorists. It's just this one guy.
You are no better than he is.
What do you have me do?
Help me stop him.
Mrs. Wolf tells him
it's too late.
But she must have just been talking about it being late at night, because the next morning she has an immediate change of heart, frees him, and says the wolf is going to attack Washington, but she can't be a part of it. Now, Brandt is ready to make a raid on the village. It's supposed to be a rescue, but I don't see how anybody could have survived this. Luckily, Gord and his new family were already in the midst of an escape, so they don't get blown up like a bunch of other innocent people do. And then we get a fight with a landmine sequence. I love a good landmine sequence, but, I'll also take this one. We get a staple Arnold line. Get down! And Brandt arrives like a big hero until Gord bursts his bubble.
I fight terrorists with terror.
The wolf isn't even here anymore. He's gone to Washington to blow up another building.
The wolf, sporting a snazzy new haircut and some nice gloves, arrives in Washington. Hey, Jane Lynch. She's trying to get Mrs. Wolf to show them where the wolf will strike, but I'm not convinced.
Go back.
That one?
Yeah.
Does that look familiar?
Oh my God, I think so.
If she's there as a mole, it's a brilliant plan. If the wolf tricked her into thinking that was the target, also brilliant. Either way, I don't remember how this movie ends, so this will be a surprise. However, this lingering shot of Mrs. Wolf makes me think she knows what she's doing. The wolf pulls another page out of the T-1000 playbook. And Gord tells Mrs. Wolf she did the right thing. He's really laying it on thick here. And I don't know, she's not so sure. She seems like she's racked with guilt, but then she treats her son like a real asshole.
Hey.
Did you remember that hand gesture I told you about earlier? Well, if you didn't, don't worry. This movie thinks you're stupid.
Get out now. Sangre o libertad.
Sangre o libertad.
And now a wolf is in the henhouse. And while the wolf is there, she breaks Jane Lynch's neck like a chicken. Gord is hot on her trail, and we get a random flashback to Mrs. Wolf at the scene of the original explosion. I have no idea whose perspective that's supposed to be from. Gord didn't see her. It would have made more sense to flash back to the first time he actually met her, because that was clearly a setup to capture Gord. Anyway, proving Mrs. Wolf is truly evil, she snuck an explosive in with her kid's dinosaur. Gord grabs the dinosaur and tells everyone to take cover, and this guy's like, oh shit, this is serious! I better drop this one piece of paper! Oh! Boom goes the dino! And I'd like to think that's a little revenge for Jurassic Park trampling Last Action Hero 9 years prior. I love how this building is literally filled with FBI agents, and the fireman is the one to figure all this out and save all their asses. Gord once again uses those firefighting skills to open an elevator. Not sure why he didn't just take the stairs like Brandt. Oh, that's why. Well, good call, Gordy. Collateral Damage is surprising in one aspect. It does not shy away from killing all its named stars. Thank God John Turturro got out early and alive. Mr. and Mrs. Wolf try to escape, but Gord shuts all the gates to force them back into a confrontation. He uses his axe to create a natural gas leak and set a trap. Gord's trap works. But the explosion also messes up the CG effects, causing him to float like in End of Days. Oh man, we were so close to the end too. We almost made it. Why can't these early 2000s movies stick the landing on these finales? And there are numerous unbelievable things in this movie. But least believable of all is that Gord's shirt has stayed tucked in through all of this. Gord gets a 2-for-1 special, killing Mr. and Mrs. Wolf. And if that felt unsatisfying, it's because, we're not done yet. Turns out, Mr. and Mrs. Wolf and their clothes are impervious to fire, and the movie takes a hard turn into fantasy. It's unbelievable. They're actually wolves who can be defeated only via silver bullet. It's a really cool twist. I didn't see it coming at all. Also, the filmmakers didn't either, because I made that all up. Anyway, Gord dispatches Mrs. Wolf via electrocution, and then it's on to the wolf. The wolf sets up Gord for one more big one-liner moment.
So when you're going to kill me?
Now!
Now? That's not a one-liner. That's a one-worder. You mean to tell me they had the fortitude to resist an axe pun?
You're a real pain in the axe. Accidents happen. Get to the chopper.
In the end, Gord saves the day, gains a random surrogate son, and that's Collateral Damage. As mentioned earlier, Collateral Damage was supposed to come out in October of 2001, but was shelved after 9/11. They had to make some changes to the movie, including showing the aftermath of Brandt's attack on the village that killed a bunch of innocent people, way more than the original terrorist attack. And then there was a scene in which a terrorist played by Sofia Vergara hijacks a plane. I couldn't find that hijacking scene, but I did discover that this is Bill Hader's screen debut.
How much time we got? 3 or 4 hours, depending on the weather.
Well, it would have been if the scene wasn't deleted, but he was a PA on set and he got randomly plucked to play a pilot. He even got his SAG card out of it, which did start his acting career. The other thing I found was an alternate to the murder by snake scene.
He had a hat on. I didn't recognize him.
Originally, instead of murder by snake, it was going to be mild irritation by magazine. But Collateral Damage was eventually released in February 2002. The reason why they dropped it in the dead of winter was because the longer the movie sat on the shelf, the more money it cost them. So rather than try to build back up to a big release with marketing and promotion, they just dumped it in theaters to at least try to recoup some of their money. Despite that, or maybe because of it, Collateral Damage won a sleepy weekend with $15 million. Arnold was back on top, baby! Well, temporarily. Week 2, it dropped 44% and ended up in 5th place. And by week 3, it dropped to 10th. And that was pretty much it. Ended its domestic run around $40 million. Just $6 million more than the 6th day. And its worldwide total only hit $28 million, almost half of 6th day. Man, it topped out at $78 million. Not even enough to make back its $85 million budget. 25 of which, of course, went to Arnold. Reviews, they were even worse than the box office. Not quite as bad as End of Days, but almost 19% on Rotten Tomatoes. The consensus seemed to be Arnold's clinging to a genre that's long since passed its expiration date. Except for our man Ebert.
Well, this is a traditional Arnold Schwarzenegger thriller, and I enjoyed it on that level.
I love how Ebert is ride or die for Arnold. I am so here for it. Actually, both Roper and Ebert gave Collateral Damage 2 thumbs up. Ebert even gave it 3 stars in his written review and was quite elegant in his explanation, as usual. There will not be any more action stories like this for a long time. We're at the end of the tunnel. The light is out. The genre is closed. Collateral Damage may stir unwanted associations for some viewers. Others may attend it with a certain nostalgia, remembering a time, was it only 5 months ago, when such scenarios fell under the heading of entertainment. But what we discovered was that people were just not interested in a movie that dealt with themes concurrent with the themes they were watching every day on TV. Now that we have 20 years of breathing room, how does Collateral Damage hold up today? I always looked at Collateral Damage as sincere Commando, almost as if Arnold went so far into self-parody that he folded back onto himself and came out on the other side with a need to course-correct his image. And they try to elevate the usual Arnold formula by keeping it grounded, and they throw in some political intrigue between the different departments of government, CIA and the FBI. But it betrays one of Arnold's most important tenets of an action movie: punctuating moments of tension with levity. There are very few jokes here, especially from Arnold's character. It's all played straight and sober, but much like the idea that Gord is losing himself to the cause of revenge, the heart of the movie, Gord losing his wife and son in a terrorist attack, fades into the background the deeper into the jungle he goes. Now, a lot of that has to do with the failure to make his family actual characters, and instead using them as ready-made emotional pawns to set up this story. It's a hard thing to pull off. If you spend too much time with his family, the audience feels manipulated, knowing in a movie called Collateral Damage, they will end up becoming just that. But not enough time, and you quickly lose the emotional core. Gord doesn't even bring a picture of his family into the jungle. But more recently, The Last of Us showed that you can have a really nice balance of introducing us to a character anyone who's played the game knows is going to die, but infusing that character with specificity and personality so that their death still has meaning and is still surprising. And that's why the term fridging, or women in refrigerators, exists as a trope. It was a term created by comics writer Gail Simone, and basically means that women are killed or kidnapped or whatever as a means of moving the male lead story forward. It refers specifically to a Green Lantern comic from 1994, where his girlfriend was literally stuffed into a fridge. If you don't flesh out the characters you're fridging and make them feel real, audiences are smart enough to innately sense that, and it creates a disconnect. As far as the action, it's serviceable but unmemorable. This movie is rated R, but it's gotta be the tamest R-rated Arnold movie in his entire filmography. There's some swearing, lots of explosions, but very little blood. There just isn't anything all that unique outside of murder by snake. Even the waterfall sequence is something we've seen in Predator and The Sixth Day and even The Fugitive. But that didn't stop me from rewatching Collateral Damage numerous times over the years to see if I missed something. I equate it to, this is going to sound weird, but the movie Canadian Bacon. When I was a kid, I loved John Candy. I still do. But when I was younger, I was almost obsessed with him and watched everything he did. I thought Who's Harry Crumb was hilarious. And then I discovered I was one of the only people on the planet who had even heard of Harry Crumb, let alone seen it. I was devastated when he died. And one year for Christmas, I got a VHS copy of his last movie released, Canadian Bacon, directed by Michael Moore. I watched it and was like, I don't think I like this, but I can't say that out loud because it's John Candy. And so every couple months I would pull it out again and be like, I think I missed something. Let me try again. And I'd watch it in hopes that it would get better. But I could just never get there with Canadian Bacon, mostly because it stinks. It's a phenomenon my friend Bunker and I have coined as the Ravenous, named after the Guy Pearce movie Ravenous, which isn't a good movie, but every single year, without fail, we remember it in pieces and go, oh yeah, that part was pretty good, and that other part too. Why do we not like this movie? I don't understand. I think it's good. We got to give it another shot. And every time the credits roll at the end and we're like, nope, fucking did it again. Ravenous, not good. Well, add Collateral Damage to the list. I've tried, my friends. I've tried. It's competently made, but it's disposable and not built for repeat viewings. And that's the cardinal sin of an Arnold movie. All right, let's get to the stats. Acting chops, 4. Arnold plays his grief more as shock, and once he hits Colombia, he's on autopilot. Kill count. Despite claiming he would just kill the wolf, Gord kills 4 people. Though it could have been a couple more because he had a couple grenades go off, for a total of 601. Catchphrase. Just by default, I have to go with, the difference is I'm just going to kill you. And here are the Every Arnold Movie Ever rankings. Got your cameos. Number 26, Hercules in New York. Number 25, The Villain. Number 24, Red Sonja. Number 23, Stay Hungry. 22, Batman and Robin. 21, Collateral Damage. And the rest remain unchanged. Next up, Arnold returns to his most iconic role without his most important collaborator to try and recapture box office glory. Does he rise to the occasion or sink further into a vat of disappointment? Come with me if you want to find out when I cover Terminator 3: Rise of the Machines.